At 1:39 in the afternoon on June 12, 2025, on the runway at Ahmedabad Airport in western India, the temperature is pushing 37 degrees Celsius. A Boeing 787 bound for London lifts off the ground. In seat 11A, next to the window, sits a 40-year-old British man named Vishwas Kumar Ramesh. Across the aisle in 11J sits his older brother, Ajay. They are flying home together. 32 seconds later, both engines are dead. The aircraft never climbs past the rooftops. It comes down into a medical college on the edge of the city, into buildings full of doctors and students eating lunch. 241 people on board are killed. 19 more die on the ground. And then, out of the smoke, on his own 2 feet, a single man walks out of the wreckage. It is the man from 11A. His brother, 11 feet away across the aisle, does not come out. This is not only the story of that man, it is the story of a question that has haunted crash investigators for more than 50 years. We are going to travel a long way. From a hostile courtyard in India to a mountain ridge in Japan, hidden so deep in the forest that rescuers could not reach it for 15 hours. From a column of rising air above the Amazon rainforest in Peru to a wrong runway in the dark in Lexington, Kentucky. 4 aircraft, 4 decades, 4 catastrophes that should have killed everyone on board. And in each one, against every law of probability, somebody lived. The people who study these crashes have spent their careers chasing one idea. When a plane falls out of the sky and almost nobody survives, is the person who walks away simply lucky? Or is there something they share, a seat, a posture, a decision in the final seconds that made the difference between living and dying? By the end of this, you will know what the data actually says. And you will know the one answer that nobody wants to hear. To understand how rare these survivors are, you have to understand how rare these crashes are. The news agency Reuters once reviewed 1,400 commercial aviation accidents. In all of those crashes, across all of those years, they found only 45 cases where between 1 and 5 people survived. For 20 of those 45, investigators could even pin down where the survivors had been sitting. That is the entire data set. 45 events, a handful of human beings pulled from wreckage that consumed everyone around them. And every time it happens, the same questions surface, because we cannot accept that it was random. We want a pattern. We want a rule. We want to believe that if it were us, there is something we could do. It is a powerful instinct, and an old one. Search the internet for the safest seat on a plane, and you will find decades of articles, each one confident, many of them contradicting the last. The aisle, the window, the back, over the wing. The appeal is obvious. If there is a safe seat, then survival is a choice, and a choice is something we can control. The 4 people you are about to follow were not chosen by a rule, but each of them, for a few moments, looks like the proof of one. So let us look for the pattern. Let us start with the man who walked out of the fire in Ahmedabad. The investigation into Air India Flight 171 is still open. But a preliminary report has already told us something almost impossible to believe. 3 seconds after the aircraft left the runway, at its maximum recorded speed of 180 knots, both fuel control switches moved from run to cutoff, one and then the other, a single second apart. These are not buttons you brush against by accident. They are physically guarded levers that must be deliberately lifted to move. And when they moved, both engines simply stopped. On the cockpit voice recorder, one pilot is heard asking the other why he had cut off the fuel. The other pilot answers that he did not. The report does not say who said what. It does not say why the switches moved. It only confirms that they did. There is one more detail buried in the findings. Back in 2018, American regulators had issued an advisory about a possible flaw in exactly this kind of fuel control switch, on exactly this kind of Boeing. Inspecting it was not mandatory. Air India did not inspect it. None of that explains what happened in the cockpit that afternoon. It only widens the silence around it. What is certain is that 242 people had perhaps 10 seconds left. The buildings it came down into belonged to a medical college. Inside were doctors and students on their lunch break. It was, by every measure, the worst possible place and the worst possible hour. That is where the 19 people on the ground died. Now follow the physics of the impact, because this is where the difference between living and dying gets decided. The plane clips a stand of trees. The nose pitches slightly upward. The tail shears off against the first building. The rest of the fuselage keeps driving forward, tearing through walls and ceilings. The right wing breaks away, then the left. The wings carried the fuel tanks, and they become the fireball. Vishwash Kumar Ramesh was seated just ahead of that section, by the window, next to an emergency exit. When the fuselage fractured, it tore open a gap right beside him, and it tore open before the fire reached his row. He climbed out through the hole in the side of the aircraft. 11 feet away, his brother did not have a gap. The difference between the two Ramesh brothers was a rupture in the metal that opened on one side of the aisle and not the other. One survivor, the seat by the window. It looks, for a moment, like a clue. Hold on to that clue, because the next crash points in the opposite direction. It is the evening of August 12th, 1985, the day before a major holiday in Japan. Japan Airlines Flight 123, a Boeing 747, is completely full. 524 people are flying home to their families. In row 56, near the very back, sits a young woman named Yumi Ochiai. She is a flight attendant for the airline, but today she is off duty, traveling as an ordinary passenger, flipping through a magazine. 12 minutes after takeoff, she hears a bang. The cabin pressure drops. The oxygen masks fall. What she does not know is that 10 meters of the tail fin have just torn away. 7 years earlier, this exact aircraft had landed too hard and damaged its rear pressure bulkhead. The repair was done improperly. For 7 years, that bad repair held. Now, at altitude, it gives way, and the explosive decompression rips out the tail and destroys the hydraulic systems. The pilots no longer control the airplane. It climbs and falls on its own, rolling from side to side for 32 minutes. Yumi Ochiai does what she was trained to do. She helps other passengers with their masks. Around her, people begin writing farewell notes to the ones they love. Then the right wing strikes a tree, and the jumbo jet rolls onto its back and slams into a mountain ridge in Gunma Prefecture. 520 people die. 4 survive. And every single one of the 4, Yumi Ochiai and 3 others, was sitting in the rear of the aircraft, in the section behind the wings, anchored to the heavy structure of the tail. So now we have a contradiction. In India, the survivor sat near the front. In Japan, All 4 survivors sat in the back. But the cruelest detail of Flight 123 is not about seats at all. The crash site was deep in a remote mountain range, and the rescue teams did not reach it for 15 hours. Part of the reason is almost unbearable to say out loud. The authorities assumed no one could have survived and chose to wait until morning to mount a full operation. Medical examiners later concluded that many more people had lived through the impact than were found alive. Yumi Ochiai later said the screams of other survivors kept her awake through the night. By morning, most of them had gone quiet. The difference between living and dying on that ridge was not only where you sat, it was how long you could wait and whether anyone was coming. If you still believe there is a safe seat, this next story will take it away from you completely. Julian Kepke is 17 years old. It is Christmas Eve, 1971. She has just attended her graduation party in Lima, Peru, and now she and her mother are trying to reach her father, a biologist at a research station deep in the Amazon. Every flight is full except one, Lanza Flight 508, a Lockheed Electra operated by an airline her father had explicitly warned them about. But she did not want to miss her graduation, so they board. She takes seat 19F, second from the back. For the first 20 minutes, the mood is festive. The crew begins serving breakfast. Julian looks out the window at the forest below. Then the plane flies straight into a wall of storm cloud. The world outside goes dark in the middle of the day. Lightning flashes on every side. An invisible force shakes the aircraft like a toy in a child's hand. Luggage flies through the cabin. Passengers scream. And at around 3,000 meters, roughly 10,000 feet, the aircraft breaks apart in the air. Julian is thrown out into open sky, still strapped into her seat. This is the part she would spend the rest of her life trying to describe. She is hanging upside down. The roar of the engines is gone, replaced by the rush of wind. Beneath her, the rainforest canopy is turning in slow circles, green and impossibly dense. And for a moment, she thinks the jungle is rising toward her, before she understands that it is she who is falling toward it. The treetops look soft. They remind her of the heads of broccoli. Then there is no more thought. There is only darkness. She fell 2 miles, and she lived. To this day, no one fully understands how. She believes it was 3 things working together: a powerful updraft beneath the storm that slowed her descent, the row of seats acting like a spinning parachute, and the tangle of vines and canopy that broke her fall. She woke 20 hours later on the forest floor, alone, with a broken collarbone, a torn knee, and a deep gash in her right arm. Her mother's seat had been right next to hers. Her mother was gone. As many as 14 other people are believed to have survived that initial fall, including her mother, only to die on the ground, injured, waiting for a rescue that came for no one. Julian remembered something her father had taught her. If you are ever lost in the jungle, find running water and follow it downstream, because water leads to people. So she did. She lived on a single bag of candy she had found in the wreckage. She passed caimans on the banks and deer in the brush and did not stop. The wound in her arm filled with botfly larvae. She counted 35 maggots burrowing under her skin, and she remembered watching her father pour gasoline into a dog's infected wound to drive the worms out. So she found gasoline at last in a small boat, poured it into her own arm, and counted the maggots as they writhed loose. After 11 days, she reached a lumber camp. She was the only one of the 92 people aboard to come out of that forest alive. Where she was sitting made no difference at all. She did not survive because of her SEAD. She survived because the sky, for reasons no investigator can replicate, decided not to kill her. There is one more survivor you need to meet, and his story is the one that breaks the pattern for good, because he is not just the person who lived, he is the person who caused the crash. It is just before 6 in the morning on August 27th, 2006, at Bluegrass Airport in Lexington, Kentucky. The sun is not up yet. First Officer James Polhinke has logged more than 3,500 hours in this type of regional jet. Captain Jeffrey Clay has logged thousands more. 47 passengers board for a flight to Atlanta. The airport has 2 runways that cross each other. The long one, runway 22, is for jets like theirs. The short one, runway 26, is for small private planes. To reach the long runway, you have to taxi across the short one. As they taxi, the 2 pilots talk about their families. The captain mentions his wife wants 4 children. It is an ordinary human conversation, and under federal rules during taxi, it is forbidden. From engine start to takeoff, pilots are required to discuss only the flight. The recordings show they did not. They stopped the aircraft at the end of the short runway. They miss the painted runway numbers. They miss that their compass heading does not match the runway they were cleared for. The control tower could have caught it, but the single controller on duty had turned away to do paperwork and was, the report later found, most likely exhausted. Captain Clay hands control to Polhinke. He pushes the throttles forward on a runway barely half the length they needed. To lift off, they needed to reach 142 knots. At the end of the pavement, they were doing 131. Polhinke pulled back on the control column anyway. The jet was too slow. It could not fly. A local police officer and a security guard were the first to reach the burning wreckage. They pulled an unconscious man from it and rushed him to the hospital. Within 3 minutes, the fire crews had knocked down most of the flames. It did not matter. 49 people died at the scene. The official report called it a perfect storm. A crew that talked when they should have been silent. Airport charts that were out of date. A lone, exhausted controller who had turned his back to do paperwork at the exact moment a glance out the window would have saved 50 lives. No single one of those failures would have brought the plane down. All of them together did. And the only person pulled alive from the wreckage was James Polhinke, the pilot who had taxied onto the wrong runway and pushed the throttles forward. He lost a leg. He lost most of his memory of that morning. And he was left to carry the rest of his life, knowing what the rest of his life would be. Years later, he said it himself. The people on that plane were his responsibility and Captain Clay's. He said, "I'm sorry we made that mistake because they lost their loved ones that day." The difference between living and dying on that runway was nothing he did right. It was an accident of where the wreckage threw him. The survivor was the one man who would have given anything to trade places. So, go back to the question. The window seat in India. The tail in Japan. The fall in Peru. The cockpit in Kentucky. Front, back, middle, flight deck. Every part of an airplane has produced a sole survivor, and every part has produced 400 corpses. Time magazine once crunched the numbers and found the middle seats in the rear had a marginally higher survival rate, but the researchers themselves admitted the difference was tiny, and the sample was small. The experts we trust say the same thing, plainly. Survival in a catastrophic crash depends far less on your seat than on something you cannot choose at all: how the airplane happens to hit the ground, and whether it stays in one piece when it does. That is the answer nobody wants. There is no safe seat. There is no posture, no trick, no row that turns a falling aircraft into a survivable one. The survivors of these 4 disasters have almost nothing in common, because in a crash, this severe life and death is very largely a matter of chance. But here is the turn that the chance obscures. These crashes are the rarest events in modern transportation. An MIT researcher calculated that you could board a flight every single day for 55,000 years before the odds caught up with you. And even when a plane does come down, the United States Transportation Safety Board found that more than 95% of people involved in crashes survive. Modern aircraft are built to be emptied in 90 seconds with half the exits blocked, which means the seat is not where you should put your faith. Your behavior is: count the rows to your nearest exit so your hands can find it in the dark or the smoke. Learn the brace position. Desert crash tests proved it reduces head and spine injuries. When the aircraft stops, leave everything behind. People have burned to death in survivable crashes because the passengers ahead of them stopped to wrestle a bag from the overhead bin. Wear cotton or wool, not synthetics that melt onto skin. None of it will save you from physics. All of it might save you from the 90 seconds after physics is done. In the end, you cannot draw the line through these 4. Yumi Ochiai survived a mountain and listened to the others fade through the night. Julian Kepke fell 2 miles into a rainforest and walked out alone 11 days later without her mother. James Polhinke lived through the crash he caused and has had to be alive every day since. And Vishwas Kumar Ramesh walked out of a fireball in Ahmedabad, while his brother Ajay, 11 feet across the aisle, did not. Speaking from his hospital bed, Vishwas later described himself in 7 words: the luckiest man alive who lost everything. That is the whole truth of these stories, held in one sentence. We keep searching the wreckage for a rule, because a rule would mean we have some control over the falling. But the survivors are not the proof of a pattern. They are the proof that there isn't one. The difference between living and dying, in the rarest catastrophes the sky produces, is almost never something the survivor earned. It is only something the survivor has to live with. If a story like this stays with you, that is the reason this channel exists, to sit inside the moments most people only see as a headline and find the human being in seat 11A. Subscribe and stay for the next one.